Hello and welcome to Georgie's Stripping the Dipping podcast. I'm your host, F1 Black. It's been a brilliant week for us here at the podcast. Finally, AMG Dens has come back to YouTube Live for a special episode with Tommy Music. And two of our favourite drivers and recurring guests made major milestones in their aspiring motorsport careers. First, we learnt that Taylor Ferns would run all 4 Indy NXT oval races this season, taking yet another leap toward her dream of competing at Indy. Then we watched Colin Queen step into GB3 for the first time, with a creditable top 10 in qualifying and a stunning first lap move around the outside to take 8th place on his debut. But on to business, and I couldn't have chosen a better word because this week we are delighted to welcome Managing Director of Britpart, Paul Myers. Britpart is a major supplier of quality Land Rover parts and a big sponsor of off-road racing in the UK. And who better to host him than our very own Colin Johnston? If there's something Colin doesn't know about motor racing on these islands bobbing up and down off the northwest coast of Europe, it's not worth knowing. So over to you, Colin.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of Georgie's Stripping the Dipping. I'm Colin Johnston, your host this evening. Thanks for joining me for what should be a really interesting chat. In this episode, we're joined by the man responsible for Britpart, one of the most recognisable brands in the world of off-road vehicles. And I'm looking forward to finding out about that and much more. So please join me in welcoming Paul Myers.
Hi, good evening. How are you?
Hi, Paul. Great to have you along. How's things with you? How's life?
Yes, very good, thank you. Very good. Yes, no, it's dark and cold over here in the UK at the moment, but still enjoying it.
Good stuff. Yeah, it's a bit the same here in Belfast as well. A bit of a miserable spring evening, but sure, a bit of motor racing chat will warm our hearts a bit, hopefully.
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
A good way to start, perhaps, Paul, is how would you introduce yourself if I met you at a party or something? Who is Paul? What do you do?
Okay, we run a company called Britpart. We manufacture and supply Land Rover parts and general off-road parts for vehicles literally everywhere in the world. So basically we're a big wholesale company. We ship parts, we get them literally to Australia, New Zealand, Sri Lanka, you name it, they go there.
Fantastic. I was taking a wee look at the website today, and I think, I suppose with listeners all around the world, being in UK, I've been familiar with Britpart. I think anybody who's flicked through the British motor magazines over the last 30 years would have come across Britpart. But looking through your website over this last day or two, it's a remarkable range of things you do, from a set of brake pads for a series Land Rover to chassis to the most outrageous modern off-road kit.
Sure, yeah. I mean, what we try and do is provide a one-stop shop for somebody with a Land Rover vehicle. So, as you say, it can be a complete chassis, a complete engine, complete gearbox, or a spark plug or a headlight bulb. And the philosophy of the company is that we supply those products fast. We have them in stock. They're good quality, good price. We can ship them and get them to a workshop as and when required.
Fantastic. I suppose that's the balance nowadays in this modern world, not only having the speed and the depth of stock, but having the quality. When there's so much available now to people through different suppliers and all strands of life now, being known for having a quality product, I suppose, is what keeps you head and shoulders above the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the vehicles we supply are Land Rover ones, and they've changed an awful lot in the marketplace over the last 20 years or so. So they used to be just a cheap farm runaround, which people didn't really spend a lot of money on. And now even a Defender is an expensive car. But obviously you start looking at Range Rovers or Discoveries or Velars or Evoques, and they're very expensive cars. So those sort of owners demand the part be fitted, and it works first time. So we put an awful lot of effort into doing the quality control and getting the quality of those parts right.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose, again, given the range of parts that you guys are doing, I suppose it's from the hobbyist, perhaps with a classic vehicle, through the motorsport family, And then I suppose to people with those higher end, effectively luxury vehicles now that need service parts and spares for those as well. So it's a very wide range of customer, I would imagine.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the older vehicles, so like a early Defender or a series vehicle from 1970, it's a great vehicle to work on. Everything is accessible. Everything's just nuts and bolts, and no electronics. Very simple cars to work on, and people can tackle those on their driving with a basic tool set and maintain them, which has always been the beauty of a car. But the later vehicles are a lot more complex. You need diagnostic equipment, and they're a lot heavier. So you can looking at 2,700 kilos for a modern Discovery. You don't want to be trying to jack that up and try and do a clutch on your drive.
Change times, indeed. Yeah, yep. And I suppose getting a wee bit deeper into that as well, it comes to mind there's talk of various restrictions perhaps coming down the line in terms of what you're allowed to do to modify your vehicles, or there's talk now and again that perhaps the home enthusiast will be dissuaded by legislation from modifying vehicles or servicing their own vehicles. Is that something that would impact, or something that you see coming down the line?
I think it's coming down the line. I mean, we see it already in certain markets. So territories like Spain or Norway or Germany, it's very difficult to modify a vehicle and maintain it through the relevant MOT standard to get it roadworthy every year. So those territories are already there, and the car has to be presented really in a standard manufactured state. UK is still very relaxed, like Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland, where you can really do whatever you want as long as it meets a certain criteria. But I'm sure that will come in the future. One thing we are seeing is a few cases at the moment of tuning companies being taken to court. One was taken to court in the States for quite a big way, and another smaller company in the UK for doing basically diesel modifications to get around the emissions.
Yes.
So we have to be careful and obviously be in front of those changes in legislation to make sure that we're compliant.
I suppose, well, that example he gives, if somebody's obviously trying to defeat legislation that's in there for good reason, like diesel legislation or whatever, but I suppose in a way, the quality of the parts that you guys are offering and the quality of upgrades that you guys would offer, in a way, an older vehicle, given a bit of love and care with the type of accessories and the type of upgrades that you would provide, it's probably a better quality vehicle than what it was in standard trim. That's sort of the paradox of maybe a legislation that's insisting on something being to factory spec. Perhaps it could be better still.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of the parts on a Defender, which when the cars were made, for example, in 1985, you could fit a lot later part to the car, which improves performance, emissions, and drivability of the car. So there's a lot of modification you can do, which actually enhances it from all those points of view.
But here we are with this fantastic business. I suppose winding back a bit, why Land Rover and why motoring? What got you into not just this business, but what got you inspired as a young kid in the world of motoring?
Always been fascinated with cars. The first Land Rover I bought when I was 17. Seems an awful long time ago, which it probably is now. And it just gets under your skin. They are great cars to play around with, modify. They're not perfect, so it's easy to modify them and make them better. And it leads you into a great enthusiast scene as well. So
yes.
All around the world you go, if you're driving a Defender and you see one coming the other way, people wave at each other. Yeah. And to be part of that community is great. So it's the only other mark and brand which has any sort of following like that really is VW. So the the association you get by being that part of that club, as it were, is great.
Fantastic.
As a business, my background was in marketing and selling fast moving, low value construction products. And the similarity with that is that automotive parts are predominantly low value oil filters, brake pads, spark plugs, and you've got to move a lot of them to to pay the bills. So there's a lot of crossover in that industry.
Fantastic. And how did you find your way into Britpart? You were working for other folks, or was it just the enthusiasm and an opportunity to get involved with Britpart?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I'd worked for an American company for in the construction industry for cracky about 10, 15 years. And that had been really successful, but it kind of lost its challenge. So looked around and landed at Britpart 20 odd years ago, and not looked back since.
Very good. Very good. Fantastic. And I've seen, looking about, obviously Britpart is involved in sponsorship and the cross-country British Championships and whatnot, and sport around off-road vehicles. I believe that's something you've more than dabbled with yourself.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we've been involved in the off-road racing scene probably for about 15 years now, and we've run a couple of cars in the British Off-Road Championship over the years, and also sponsored the championship and other off-road events, because even if a guy's racing, the cars they may race are not Land Rover based. Vast bulk of them are actually in a Land Rover repair business, because it is natural that if you're fixing Land Rovers all day, you play around with them on a weekend as well.
Fantastic. And so, Lee's, I've watched some of this racing, obviously, but it's not something I'm hugely familiar with. So they would tend to be specials, or space frame specials, or?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the car we race outwardly looks like a Defender, but it's a fiberglass outline of a body onto a space frame. It's got a rear engine instead of a front engine, fully sequential gearbox, and pretty expensive Fox suspension from the States. So it's, although it looks pretty stock from a distance, it is purely an off-road racing machine.
Fantastic. And what sort of engines do you run in those? Is it the veritable Rover V8 based, or what sort of engines?
It is. It starts as a Rover V8. We have them built by a fantastic engine builder called John Eels. They start at 4 litres and end up at 5.2 litres, which is what we've got. And it's got like H-beam conrods, a big crankshaft in it to give it the capacity, and a bespoke DTA fuel injection system. So it's pretty impressive what the engines will do from a pretty basic starting point.
I was going to say there must be serious torque with that. It must be some kick.
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, the figures in modern cars, and certainly electric cars, aren't mind blowing anymore. But it's 350 horsepower, 350 foot-pound of torque. But the impressive thing is the torque is literally from tick over to 5,500 RPM. Wow. And the car just keeps pulling. We gear the car very low, so we don't, in the forests in the UK, you don't really need to be going over 100 miles an hour. You don't really want to go above 100 miles an hour. So we gear it to that, and so it gets there pretty quickly.
And for anybody who perhaps is more familiar with rallying, pure rallying rather than sort of off-road vehicle, you're really looking at performance and speeds that the traditional rally cars would be doing on forest stages, maybe at a national level, but you have this ability to go anywhere. It's a remarkable machine, and it sounds like, and it looks like really interesting racing.
Sure, yeah. I mean, the cars ultimately aren't as set up as well to handle as a traditional rally car. because we have to run a higher ride height to get down the more challenging terrain that we race on.
Yeah.
But you make up for that with the fact we've got unlimited engine power, whereas most classes in rallying will run a restrictor or CC limit, so you're not going to find a car with a 5.2 litre engine in modern day rallying.
Yeah, true. It looks. I must admit, it's something I've caught up with sort of recently, and I've seen bits and pieces of it, and it does look very interesting because it seems to be a mix. It's a mix of rallying and of, if anybody's familiar with trials as well, car trials from back in the day and still are carried out. But it's an interesting mix of old style rallying and trials to me.
Sure, yeah. I mean, most of the circuits we will use will be familiar names like Sweet Lamb in North Wales, Killer Kielder up in top end of Yorkshire. They are the traditional rallying forests where for 1970s and 60s the RAC rallies have always run in these places. So we use those tracks, and then to join up the tracks, we'll go through the actual forest on the fire breaks. The tracks cut through the middle of the forest, which is a more challenging bit, and then you get back onto the forest road, which is sort of gravel. So it's pretty exciting that you're going on tracks that you saw your heroes racing on when you were teenagers at those venues. Albeit we make it a bit more difficult with more challenging terrain.
Fantastic. And it seems that it's developed into a very, I know it's sort of international, but in a way a very British style of motor racing, because it's incorporating the terrain that you have at hand and the vehicles sort of that you have at hand, starting from roughly a Land Rover type vehicle and then sort of moving forward as development has moved along.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a whole spectrum of vehicles in the sport, and you can start out literally with a basic Freelander, which all you need to do is put a roll cage in, a pair of racing seats and a kill switch and a fire extinguisher, and you're racing. And you're racing against equivalent cars in that same class. So there's a championship called the Freelander Challenge. So you can get a Mark 1 Freelander, £5,000, modify it, and you're on the start line. Right up to fully custom built cars, which are probably now £100,000, some of them. So there's a whole mix between there. And at the top end of the sport, it then transfers into those guys will go down into France and race in some of the big French events. And the cars have to be slightly different, but that's a great step up. And quite a lot of the guys we've raced with have actually gone over and done the Dakar as well, which kind of is the off-road motorsport scene.
Indeed. It's interesting. It reminds me of a conversation we had on the podcast a couple of months ago. I was speaking to Sean O'Connor from the FIA, originally from Ireland, and he was talking about how he had introduced cross-country rallies in the Gulf.
Yes.
Back in the day, sort of 20 odd years ago, and it was a similar philosophy because it was motorsport that involved the vehicles that were available to hand and the terrain that was available to hand, rather than imposing some sort of foreign motorsport scene onto another country. So I guess in a way it's a similar approach. It's relatively cheap vehicles that are available at hand in the terrain that you're living in, and it's a very elemental form of motorsport.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I have been over to the Gulf and supported a friend of mine over there a few years ago. He was doing the Desert Challenge, and at that time he was doing it in not a standard Defender, but what looked like a very standard 110 Defender, albeit with a big engine. But he evolved and ended up running a special two-wheel drive buggy, like a Dakar buggy, which to be fair, we think is a bit of a shame, really, when you've got a very good silhouette of a vehicle, it's recognisable. It's far better for marketing on and far better for spectator involvement in the sport, rather than a kind of a fiberglass mold of a buggy which nobody knows what it is.
And they can look all rather samey. Yes, yeah, I get your point exactly. Yeah, if you can have
Yeah,
something that looks Range Rover, Land Rover, G Wagon, whatever, um, yeah, but certainly it's a more recognizable thing for spectators. Maybe
sure,
allows for
yes.
better connection.
Absolutely. I mean, people see a Defender with Nissan Patrol or
Hmm.
a Toyota, or one of the big American trucks racing, and they immediately identify with it. But if it's a completely special, a unique vehicle which is just made for that event,
Yeah.
it's difficult to relate to.
Hmm. Hmm. And you do a lot of this racing still yourself, or obviously you sponsor and support and whatever, but do you regularly race in the championships yourself still?
Yes, I mean we were racing up in Scotland in November. It was very cold and very dark up there. It's
I can
one of the
imagine.
best events we do, because it's kind of the last one in the season. It's because of the time we race to up there, and in fact it's Scotland at that time of year. We'll do half the event in the dark, which is always a challenge and interesting.
Mm.
So yes, we were up there in Scotland, mid-November.
Oh, wow. And is there any pace notes involved, or is there a large element of navigation, or is it just reading the road as you find it?
We do two basic types of event. We do what we call a comp safari, and that's across around a preset circuit, which will probably be between 6 and 10 miles long. You'll have a navigator, and the navigator can't have pace notes, but he can tell you warnings, and he can tell you which way he goes from memory. So
Right. Okay.
he can't have pace notes like a proper rally car. We then do, like, the event in Scotland is called is then called a hill rally, and that's a multi-stage event. So you'll do say 6 mile stage, then a liaison route down a road, and then another 8 mile stage, and then a service, and then back out, and repeat that. So you're going on different ground all the time. And on those, the navigator does have a map and does have notes for the liaison routes.
Brilliant.
But the challenge is that in the cars, when you are at race speed in the forest, it's a bit like being in a tumble dryer. So the chance of reading the map are pretty slim.
I can imagine. I can imagine. It must be quite a sight. I just think you're talking about sort of road sections or whatever. It must be quite a sight to see all of you guys between stages or doing road sections. I'm sure you're inspiring a lot of kids out there who are happening upon you guys heading down the road.
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, you wherever you go, you'll get a good reception. I mean, for many years we didn't do liaison routes on the road, but we've just
Mhm.
managed to. The sport has just managed to get those back in for the first time a couple of years ago. So it opens it up so that you are going into one event we're involved in was in mid Wales, and you go into a place called Welshpool in the market square, and that's the event, and the kind of headquarters for a rally, and then heading
Right.
out into the villages from there. So you get a lot of local interest.
Fantastic, fantastic. And again, it feeds back to, again, if they're, as we're saying, if they're recognizable vehicles and vehicles that people can connect with, yeah, it's all good. It's good for business, good for sport. It's good for motorsport generally.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The kids kind of love to see a Land Rover with big tires and covered in mud and making a lot of noise. It's great fun.
An increasingly rare thing now in these days of electric cars. um, it's thinking about sort of putting your sport on show. I saw some fantastic footage on YouTube, and I was aware that you're involved with the Goodwood Festival of Speed, and putting on demonstrations and showing this whole branch of motorsport off to people who perhaps aren't quite so aware of it at the Festival of Speed. How did that come about? It's really interesting.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we've been doing that I think about 8 years now, and what's fantastic is my wife Julia bought me some tickets to go to the Festival of Speed, so we went there as spectators. They had a small off-road demonstration area. I knew a couple of the guys there. We had a chat about it. And about a year later, they said, "Do you fancy getting involved and sponsoring the off-road arena and coming down and helping put the display on?" Which we jumped at the chance. That's kind of grown, and when it started, it was about 10 or 15 cars. There's now 50 cars, I think, this year we're aiming for to be in the arena. And with the guys down there and a couple of other people involved, they keep modifying the track to make the track more interesting. So you'll see in the arena, pretty close up. We can jump the cars probably 6 foot in the air, literally 6 foot in the air, 2 meters. The cars are making incredible noise as a French guy comes over with a Wankel rotary engine car, which sounds absolutely amazing. Spits flames everywhere. And they're pretty dramatic because the cars are up in 2 wheels jumping and kicking dust up everywhere. So it's been really great from that, and it gets us into a different sector of the market as well, because the guys at Goodwood, there's 100,000 spectators a day. Talking to those guys are not the normal sort of customer or end user which we'd talk to. So they may own a Range Rover, they may aspire to own a Land Rover, but they really appreciate, what the cars can do.
Fantastic. Yeah, and it comes back again to inspiring kids and inspiring people. Yeah, just through this spectacular nature of the sport and the vehicles. I suppose it gives another option to the organisers generally as well, for showing off visiting off-road vehicles in a more natural environment, not just you guys within the UK and your connections, but I suppose international connections, rather than merely running a visiting Dakar car up the hill. They can show it off in its proper environment.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've had quite a few of the guys over from America who brought, bring the trophy cars over, and they will go up the hill, but also they'll come and do a few laps around the off-road course. We've had guys from Iceland with the Formula One cars from Iceland, the massive off-road, sort of incredible engined cars. As I say, cars from France. And Dakar cars. It's amazing the spread of the interest and the different types of vehicles that we can get there. We do on the normally the Thursday as well, get to go up the hill, which is always good fun. I think last year I managed to spin it twice myself going up the hill, so I kind of ran out of talent at the first corner.
Well, I suppose in the off-road vehicle you can say that's on purpose. You're putting on a bit of a show and all that, and getting a bit sideways and chewing up the grass a bit. It's all part of the show.
Yes, we're not allowed to play in the grass. We're told off for that.
Oh dear. So you, no doubt then you say you've got 50 vehicles you're planning for. Are you involved? Are you involved in the choosing of the vehicles for that, or will that be left to Goodwood sort of team themselves?
That's left to Goodwood. Goodwood send out an invite. I mean, there's a guy called Andy Delagio who helps them with that, who advises them on that. But it is Goodwood who actually send out the invites and invite the cars and the drivers, and they're looking for diversity in the teams. They're looking for diversity in the cars. And what's great as well is the last few years there's been a bigger element of female drivers as well. So we've got quite a few female crews down there as well this year, which would be great.
That's fantastic. And again, sort of hopefully drawing a different demographic perhaps to come and view the motor racing. It's all good, all good to promote our sport.
Sure, absolutely, yes, yeah.
Very good, very good. So aside from Goodwood, which I'm sure is taking up a lot of your time, and sport, any other plans for 2024? Anything that you're particularly looking forward to?
Well, I mean, in a general business is actually very strong at the moment.
Okay, good.
And we've just acquired a new warehouse for our sister company All Makes. We'll be moving into that later in the year, which will dominate quite a lot of management time this year to get that move done. And then that will give them more space, more capability to push their business forward. All Makes have a brand within their organisation called Terra Firma. Terra Firma do a range of off-road accessories and tuning parts for Land Rover vehicles and some of the other four-wheel drive vehicles. And so with the extra space we'll gain and the capability there, we can push that forward. What's been a fantastic success since kind of COVID is the kind of staycation market. So people staying at home or staying in the UK or France or Belgium, wherever they are, camping, living an outdoor life rather than jumping on a plane and going half around the world for a holiday. And on the back of that, there's tents, there's camping chairs, furniture, cooking stoves, a whole range of products where there's a good ready market for that product. And getting in front of that, coming up with new ideas, picking new products is pretty exciting. And testing the products is also pretty exciting. So we introduced a new roof tent into a range for them. So that's a tent which actually sits on top of a car. And traditionally they're quite heavy, and they're like a pram frame. So you pull it up and it has a concertina metal frame inside it. And we introduced one last year which is actually inflatable. So instead of having a metal frame, it's purely you blow it up, and the air bellows in the corners of it give it the rigidity of a tent.
Fantastic.
That's really, that sort of thing is really exciting to get involved in and look at and see customers enjoying them.
And that's going to be a game changer, even beyond the sort of four-wheel drive vehicles that you're involved with. I suppose vehicles with a lower load capacity could cope a lot much better.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we see them on saloon cars, Audis or Mercedes, and right up to even people with camper vans will put them on a roof because it's such a convenient way to keep capacity in your vehicle, and also have your sleeping capacity.
Yeah, fantastic. Just listening to you talking about these new lines and the new space, the logistics of the business must be mind blowing. I suppose that's where you've come from, where you started out, and I suppose it's grown organically. But it must be a huge undertaking, the logistics of Britpart and the subsidiary companies.
Yes, we've got 3 sites now around the UK. We distribute everything from the UK. So although half our business is outside of the UK, we still store it and send it from the UK. So we've got the main site in Shropshire, in kind of the Midlands. That's approximately 400,000 square foot of warehousing, and best part of 300 people work on site there. And then in Abingdon, in Oxfordshire, the All Makes site, that'll be 200,000 square foot by the end of the year, and probably 150 people working there. We've got 30,000 different part numbers in the range, and we carry 99.9% availability. So there's a very good chance if we've got it in range, you'll get it next day.
That's fantastic. I suppose in this modern world, in the world of Amazon, that's the way it has to be. But yeah, a huge undertaking, financially and logistically, I'm sure.
Yeah, we're not quite up to Jeff's standard yet on Amazon, but we'll keep that in mind. But I mean, the ability to get parts overnight pretty quickly around mostly Northern Europe. And obviously further afield people will stock parts locally. That's key to it. And the great thing with a Land Rover, when you concentrate on a smaller range of vehicles, the parts You need a lot of parts, 30,000 parts in a range, as I say, but the core parts in brake pads, in brake rotors, in oil filters, etc., they're the ones that keep cropping up. So people can be brave and say, I'll buy 10 brake pads for a Discovery 4. I know that we're going to sell them in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Yep. True. So from there, then things are going great with the business. Things are going great with the motor racing as well. How, again, thinking of the business side of things and all this logistics, you're shipping from the UK. I would imagine you've had issues in post Brexit. In a way, I'm perhaps slightly surprised that you haven't dipped a toe into holding stock somewhere in Europe, perhaps, if you do so much business in that direction.
Sure. I mean, and at the beginning of Brexit, and also obviously in COVID, we looked very seriously at warehousing in France, Belgium, or Holland, to offer better logistics from a base there, because for the people who aren't familiar with the Brexit situation, what's happened is that the UK is now not part of the single trade area of Europe. So we are classed in the UK as effectively a separate trading company to Europe. So if we want to import something into France, it has to go through customs, and it has to be cleared through customs. Prior to Brexit, it would make no difference whether we sold it to a town 5 miles down the road or ship it into France. You had no customs to clear. So that's presented a lot of challenges. The kind of the resistance we had to set up a distribution network in Europe, from a base in Northern Europe, was that we didn't think that the Brexit situation, although we knew the Brexit situation wouldn't be reversed, but we thought that the customs guys would get the situation sorted out so we could do more seamless shipping into Europe.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not transpired yet. So, whereas in the past we would run 2 or 3 trucks a week into mainland Europe, and they'd do a round of deliveries from Holland, Belgium, France. Now we can send a lorry. We send a lorry every week to Paris, but you just can't get it into another country. So we distribute a lot now from Paris through our key distributor there. And even into Northern Ireland, we still send a truck every week to Northern Ireland, but that would traditionally have gone down into Southern Ireland as well, and then back from Southern Ireland into UK. That's just not feasible to do now.
Mm-hmm. Yes, folks probably internationally don't know, but yes, Northern Ireland's in a unique kind of situation at the minute, almost halfway in and halfway out in legislation terms from the European Union, and it's not always possible to transport stuff through Northern Ireland into the rest of Ireland as seamlessly as it used to be, I suppose.
No.
Yep.
No, it's certainly the challenges of distributing into Southern Ireland have really been difficult, and we probably sell a lot more in Northern Ireland now because of that, and
yes,
then the goods will be moved internally. Yeah, sure.
It's up to the customer from their head where
Absolutely,
it goes.
Yes. Yeah.
I suppose another great sort of thing on the horizon is, whether it becomes a dominant thing or not, is the rise of electric vehicles. And at the moment, certainly we're moving towards electric vehicles. I suppose there will always be a market for the older vehicles, and nobody's going to sort of axe any older vehicles before their time. It certainly appears to be the way. But are you thinking in terms of electric vehicles and how Britpart can service that market in the future?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Land Rover's only electric vehicle offering at the moment is a Jaguar, and although we sell some Jaguar parts, it's not part of our core business. And on those Jags, we don't see a lot of demand on the parts. I think the bigger demand at the moment is on the hybrids. So they do like the Evoque, the Velar, and big Range Rover in plug-in hybrids. And those are still consuming a lot of parts. Those are predominantly still an internal combustion engine vehicle, albeit it's helped by a battery. So you still consume suspension, brakes, steering components in the same way that a normal car would do. As they push forward and start introducing pure electric Range Rovers and pure electric Defenders, it will make a difference. It will change. And we will have to evolve and keep trying to keep ahead of that.
I suppose it's an interesting time, and it's everybody in a way is waiting to see how things evolve. Whether you're a consumer or whether you're in business, we're really waiting to see how things shuffle out over the next 10 years, perhaps.
Absolutely. I mean, the cost benefits of in the UK, certainly, of running an electric car as a company car now are significant. The ownership experience is getting better, but it's not there yet. And I personally drive an electric car, but I don't think it's a solution to global warming, and I don't think it's a solution to. I don't think it's the end solution. I don't think hydrogen is. I don't think electric is. I don't think plug-in hybrids are. There's going to be a different one, but we don't quite know what it is yet. So, for the guys that are old enough to remember with video machines when you had VHS and Betamax, I think we're in that sort of era at the moment, and we haven't discovered CDs yet.
That's true. I suppose the green thing to do, sort of green in inverted commas, is to maintain your older vehicle and make its life cycle as long as possible. So I guess that's what Britpart does, helps people maintain a vehicle for 20, 30, 40 years instead of just disposing of it after 8 or 10.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you can drive a car which is 40 years old and keep maintaining it, that is far more environmentally friendly than buying the latest Korean plug-in hybrid and running in that and changing it every 5 years. The environmental damage done by building the car in the first place is massive compared to the amount of fuel you'll ever put into it. And I mean, what we're seeing a massive business now is on the classic Defender, the traditional farmer owner, because there's no real alternative if a kind of hill farmer up in Scotland or Northern Ireland or the Peak District, they will just keep rebuilding the Land Rover. So they'll put a whole new chassis on it, or galvanized chassis. It doesn't really matter about the cosmetics of the vehicle, but they'll just put it on a new chassis, get it through another MOT, and just keep using the car for another 10 years. And that, from an environmentalist point of view, I think is fantastic. It's and then recycling second-hand parts. I mean, we're not going to involve in a second-hand parts market, but it's a very strong market for selling engines and gearboxes for that sort of vehicle, just to keep them going for another 10 years, which is brilliant.
Oh, it is indeed. It's certainly and I think people in the more general classic car industry and enthusiasts would agree with you as well. It makes sense. It makes sense, as you say, while things shake out until we finally see the picture as to what our new daily drivers are going to be. Perhaps it certainly makes sense to make the best of what's already out there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the interesting differences as well between the traditional classic car market, or say an MGB or a Triumph Stag, and a Land Rover, over the last 10 years, some Land Rovers have been pushed into the classic car market. Yeah. Sort of early Range Rovers, early 1940s, late 40s, early 50s, Series 1s. And the value's gone up, and the people who restored them and restored them as concourse cars, etc. That sort of car never gets driven, or very rarely gets driven. It never gets driven or worked hard.
Yes.
But I think the interesting thing is, and the British Army is a good example. The British Army are still running around in 35-year-old Defenders, towing trailers and using them on a daily basis, and that sort of use generates a lot of parts business for us.
Yes.
So if you see a farmer towing a cattle trailer to market with a 20-year-old Defender, you kind of know that he's buying brake pads, shock absorbers, springs, door hinges on a yearly basis.
Yep. Yep. And that's, I always say as well, it's maintenance is everything. The car doesn't know how old it is. So yeah, maintenance is everything. And guys like yourselves at Britpart, lets that happen for the consumers.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and the the traditional mode of operation for a farmer is to have a vehicle serviced once a year and MOT'd once a year, and it will have had a hard year, and the bill's £1,500 to do it, £1,500. But in terms of a tool for a business, it's relatively low cost for doing it. So the tough vehicles will withstand a lot of abuse, still keep going, and then a bit of tinkering once a year, and they're back for another year.
Fantastic. Well, for listeners listening to this, and if they want to catch up with you guys, obviously Britpart has their fantastic website at britpart.com, which is it's really interesting for people who are maybe not real Land Rover heads as well, because there's interesting sections on maintenance, and it's really worth having a browse about there. And you never know, it may get you into the world of Land Rovers. In terms of the sport, I suppose people going to the Festival of Speed in July can catch up with these guys there. But what's next on the calendar for the off-road racing if folks in the UK wanted to get out and see what's what?
Well, we got the car all ready to do Race Retro in Stoneleigh a few weeks ago, and unfortunately that's cancelled at the last minute due to inclement weather. We're kind of all dressed up and nowhere to go back on that weekend. I haven't got anything booked in for events at the moment, but we will definitely post it on a website when we decide what we're going to do this year for racing. We definitely go to Scotland again in November. We've done that, I think, 15 years almost running, so it's kind of a tradition that we'll definitely do Festival of Speed again. We're booked in to do that, but we'll also pick and choose a few more events to get involved in as well during the year. Love to get down into France and do a couple of the big French events, but we'd have to hire a car. Our car isn't compliant with the French regulations, so it would it's a bit of a challenge.
Well, we'll keep our eyes peeled on the Britpart website and on the socials then as well to see where we can catch up with you and the racing team and the Britpart team out and about at events.
Right, yes.
Really interesting. Before we finish, there is one question that Georgie has, and she asks everybody on the podcast this question. I think she's keeping a tally of the answers. It's a very personal question to Georgie. So I'm sure, like myself, you enjoy the odd slice of pizza.
Yes.
Now, the question Georgie wants to know the answer to is pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Definitely no.
Definitely no.
Definitely no.
Georgie, hope you're listening. Just put the tick in the box.
That's a very firm answer.
I can hear the pencil scratching from here. The big tick in the no.
No, definitely no place for pineapple on the pizza.
There we go. A definitive answer. Well, here, Paul, thanks so much for joining us this evening. It's been really interesting to hear all about Britpart and yourself and everything that you've been up to. So continued success to you and the business. And thanks for your time this evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much.